All right, let's get ready to rock and roll tonight on Straight Up. My co host slash guest, Tom Anderson, is back with us this evening. So spread the word, share the link, and let's get ready to rumble.
She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cock-a-crow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cock-a-crow, dog-a-bag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck-a-quack. Cock-a-crow, dog-a-bag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck-a-quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now a come home. The naga jackass yard for fetch the load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Lokonani. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Banga Mary. Listen to this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. Them children glad when the weekend come. Out in the yard, them all gather round. Some a play catcher, some making house from straw. Two who come later, a grandma or grandpa. All a sit down just a wait. Moonlight so bright, it's just the right time to listen story or to say a little nursery rhyme. Grandpa voice a echo in the night as he tell the tale. Some picnic are there with fright. Oh, Ligan, Mungeza, Mas.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-14 51. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins firm.
What is the difference between the ordinary thief and a political thief? Number one, the ordinary thief steals your money, your bag, your watch, and your jewelry, isn't it? But the political thief steals your future, your career, your education, your health, and your business. Number two, the hilarious part is that the ordinary thief will choose whom to rob. But you are the one who choose the political thief to rob you. Because we choose them. We vote them. We blindly say we are not blind. Who is deceiving who? The ridiculous part of the whole issue is that we will fight to defend and protect our belongings from the ordinary thief. Is it not? But we fight each other to defend and protect the political thief. Is that not what we do? Thugs will be fighting themselves to protect those that are stealing our career, stealing our joy, stealing our health, stealing our success. What a shame. What a travesty. It calls for us to think and think deep. The stage we are in as a country is not a stage where you become an onlooker. You have become an onlooker for too long. You must get ready to put your hands to the plow and be part of the process. It's not just about PVC, carry PVC. You must be in the kitchen where it is being determined. You must be there where the decisions are being made. If we are there in our numbers, they cannot outnumber us. But you leave it aloof. Oh, no, it's too dirty. It's a dirty.
All right, hey, guess what? Welcome to Straight Up on 107.1 FM. 107.1 FM. Do share the link. Let the folks know that we are on. Not only that, hey, we got a surprise for you guys. You see, those of you who want to participate, if you may have a question, a simple question to ask or a comment to make, you're free to do so whenever we open the lines, mind you. And guess who are the special folks tonight? The ones in Canada, the ones in the United Kingdom. We are working on our US number, which should be very, very soon. I don't want to say tomorrow, but very soon. And a local number, a Guyana number. So those in Canada, if you dial that Canadian number, it is a local call for you in Canada. And those of you who are in the UK, you dial that UK number. Of course, you'll have to leave out the 44. You know how to dial your local numbers there in the United Kingdom. So that's how special all of you are this evening. I noticed Ariel Hector is asking, what is the number? Well, we just said those numbers are for persons to call in if they have a comment or a question to make. And if you have a comment, don't take 10 minutes for your comment. Get straight to the point. All right? And I say that, with all due respect. Straight to the point. That is how we operate here. Go down and give those folks at Andrew's Supermarket your business and tell them we say hello on Straight Up here. And also this business out there in Brooklyn. Yeah, on Church Avenue, Brooklyn. I know you guys want to see my face. I know you guys want us to get straight to our guest. You're probably saying, hey, Mark, we want to hear from our guest, your guest, Mark, who happens to be not just my guest, but my co-host. But you guys know, maybe next week or so when he's back, we'll get to rap with each other. But for now, I just want to ask him some questions. In fact, lots of questions. And so let us bring, where is Lemon? Let us get our guest on for this evening. There he goes. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? Hi,
good,
everybody.
thank you. Glad that you're able. I know you have a busy schedule, but yet you took this special time out to spend 1 hour with us on 107.1 FM. How have you been, sir?
I've been great. Thanks. I'm glad to be back on again. Excited to talk about Guyana and the United States and China too a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited, man. Glad to be on.
Yep, we are all excited and we are happy that you are on with us to talk about that, about China, about what's really happening in Guyana and all the monies, the billions and billions of dollars, the investments, and all these manner of things. But before, here is something that I was actually, what are your thoughts on this here, Tom? Look at the headline. It says the GOP, meaning the Republicans, of course, might retake Congress in the midterms. Might retake Congress in the midterms. And that is very important in terms of discussing. I'm not saying that it's important that they retake, but what are your thoughts on this here, sir, and the possibility of that happening?
It's very possible. With our system, everything is so close now that, at any point in time, either party can fall off and the other one can jump in. But with that said, because of that, we're going to have a lot more gridlock. At the end of the day, the Democrats are probably still going to control the Senate. The Republicans may get the House. If that happens, then you have the Democrats will control the White House, then they'll control the Senate, and the Republicans will control the House of Representatives. When that happens, it's gridlock. There's nothing the government really can do legislatively. But with that said, things do get done. So as far as things go with Guyana or any other country abroad, it may not be good for you guys because when we have gridlock government, we can't really move fast. So if you guys need any assistance, if anything's going on and we have to move in a proactive fashion, not just reactive, because we will respond if there's an emergency and it's bad. But a lot of times you want us to respond or come out and deal with things before they get bad. Well, that's not going to be happening if the GOP, if they take over this next election coming up, because there's just going to be gridlock. Now, here in the United States, the citizens, we love gridlock. It's great for many of us because it's a relief from our perspective. It allows us to sit back and watch our politicians argue and fight, and they're not really doing anything that can bother us. So we sort of enjoy it. It gives us sort of a rest, and it's a little bit entertaining. For everybody else, it's going to be probably pretty bad, though. And I think it probably could happen when you look at the numbers. It's very possible.
Very possible indeed. It wouldn't be the first time that this has happened in terms of that gridlock. It has happened before, I think, on the Clinton administration. There was a gridlock. Am I correct?
Yes, there was. And look, when that happens, in the current environment now, we've never seen anything like this in the United States. So who knows how that shakes out? But I will say this. The Republicans will probably spend the next 2 years running investigations out of the House of Representatives if they get it back. And then what that does is it makes the Democrats right now have to put the pedal to the metal on the January 6th investigation. So they have to get that done before the election, because they have to get it done by at least next January, when the next Congress would be voted in. So this looks like probably the Republicans will get the House back. The Democrats will rush the January 6th investigation through. They'll probably come up with some stuff after the election, after they lose the House. And what we'll see after that are the Republicans doing payback, using the House of Representatives basically as a theater to drum up, I would say, probably a lot of fake investigations. They're not going to be real. These guys, they're not in a position to put on a real investigation right now. It's all going to be political theater. So we'll spend 2 years looking at the Republicans use the House of Representatives as a political theater to put up bogus investigations. Most likely is what's going to happen.
Bogus investigations. Tom Anderson is.
And by the way, I say bogus not because it's the Republicans. It's Congress. They don't have subpoena power. They can't force someone to really do anything. I mean, they're toothless almost. So it's really, their investigations are just political theater. They're there to affect votes, to affect elections. They're not there to actually uncover crime or make a criminal pay a price. That's not what this is about.
All right. Good evening to all of you who are now joining us. Tom Anderson, our guest this evening, no stranger to you guys. what about this, Tom? Speaking of the Republicans, Trump just threw a longtime ally under the bus. This doesn't come as a surprise to you, or does it?
No, because if you look at Trump's his history, everyone who joins his side ends up getting burned, and he ends up benefiting. So I could just go down the list. Every single person who joins up with this guy ends up getting burned. So it's no surprise.
All right, Tom Anderson is the director of Government Integrity Project out there in Washington, D.C. He is here with us. We will shift to Guyana shortly. And for those of you who are now joining us, we have some numbers, especially those out there in Canada. But we're not yet opening those the phone line. We're not opening the phone line at the moment. What is it? Look at this here, Tom. Trump had role in proposals to seize voting machines. Now, this, Tom, is not from a third world country, as we have seen during his administration, Mike Pompeo and all of them, and the masquerade in Guyana. But look at this. Tom, your take, please, before we get to Guyana.
I know it's embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing. Wow, it's embarrassing. Look, we're in a situation here where we have people who have decided that the rules really don't apply anymore, and they're just going to rewrite the rules the way they see fit. And so that's what we're dealing with Trump. He will do anything, and I mean anything, to get the power he wants. And this is just, another example of it. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing. That's what we look like, a third world country with stuff like that, for sure. It's sad.
Probably worse than a third world country, especially what Mike Pompeo wanted to do and spoke of a second term of a Trump administration. And he said that with so much passion and conviction that, yes, it's going to happen. But are you surprised at the direction that the January 6th investigation is headed? And some of the things that we are hearing.
Well, here's what I'm surprised. I'm surprised that no one is connecting the dots between the pressure being put on Trump and his inner circle and things that are happening internationally. I don't think it's a coincidence that when the committee reached out to Ivanka, that all of a sudden Ukraine became really, really hectic. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think they're connected. I think what we have going on here is we have foreign entities who have an interest in keeping what's going on, the chaos going on here, alive. So I don't think, put it this way, I think our adversaries abroad see what's going on with this committee and with this investigation. And I think they see weakness, and I think they see opportunity. And so I truly feel like we're going to see more chaos internationally as this committee starts to crack down and starts to get really close at getting after some of the key people here, I believe.
So you're of the view that the Ukraine situation and Russians' aggression, and also we notice, as Trump called him, Rocket Man out there in North Korea, is acting up. It's a diversion, really?
No, they're taking advantage of the situation. I mean, from their perspective, look at how we look. We have a former president who wants to become president again, basically telling the world, I'm willing to tear down the whole country to become president again. Well, if you're Russia and you're China, well, you kind of want that guy to do that because for you, it's a win-win. He either wins and he's back in office, or he loses and he destroys the country in losing. But either way it goes, you win. So he's, in an odd way, positioned himself to be a really good friend of Russia and China now because they see him as the ultimate tool to get in and create a lot of political chaos here. And here's the reality of it all, right? If you're Putin and you're talking to people in the EU, other governments there, and they're saying, hey, the United States has our back, Putin can say legitimately to some of these leaders, are you sure they have your back? Because if Donald Trump wins again, I don't think they're going to have your back. So are you going to gamble and hope Trump doesn't win again? Or are you going to come to your senses and become my friend because I'm the consistent player here, not the United States? That's what's happening here.
All right. Hey, Tom Anderson, our guest this evening. He's the director of Government Integrity Project out there in Washington, D.C. We are shifting over to Guyana shortly, but I want to ask Tom this question about Ted Cruz. This is what Ted Cruz is saying about President Biden. Nominating Black woman to Supreme Court is actually an insult to Black women. This is coming from Ted Cruz. Your take on this, Tom?
This, he's an unmitigated clown. Is there any other way to put it? He's a clown. What's upsetting about what I saw, what he said was, he said that, hey, if you listen to Biden, he's saying that no other person is qualified. White, male, Hispanic, the only person qualified for this is a Black woman, is what he claims Biden is saying. Well, if you take that logic, right? Has a Black woman ever served on the Supreme Court? The answer is no. So what he's saying is that there has never been a Black woman that was qualified to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Is that what he's saying? Because if that's what he's saying, then I really have a big issue. So ultimately, I think Ted Cruz is trying to out-Trump Trump, right? That's what he's trying to do. And he's a clown. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He's a clown. He should apologize at the least. I mean, it's outrageous. It's outrageous what he's saying. I don't know how else to put it.
This is a guy who pretends, who is now pretending as though he's so concerned about the Black population. This is a guy who, during the midst of the crisis, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, jumped on a plane with his family to go on vacation somewhere.
Well, it was worse. It was when the electrical grid failed in the state of Texas.
Exactly. Thank you.
And people were literally freezing to death. And he skated down to a tropical paradise.
Ran away. But this is the same Ted Cruz who probably doesn't remember, I believe, when Justice Scalia, the late Scalia, was nominated under the Reagan administration. It is Reagan who said that he wants to nominate an Italian American on the bench, an Italian American. Then there was George Bush Sr. when he nominated the guy who was created that controversy back then, the first Black person to the U.S. Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. George Bush Sr. also said that it was time for a Black person to be on the Supreme Court. I wonder what Ted Cruz is going to say about that. But they're picking on Poe Biden. All right.
Well, Mark, there's one other issue here, I think, and no one's talking about it, right? It's this. The court has never had a Black woman, right? That voice has never been on the court. How would that change the court? See, I think it's going to change the court significantly. And I feel like that's the reason why we've never seen a Black woman on the Supreme Court. And that's the reason why someone like Ted Cruz, in his gut, is opposed to the situation, because I think having a Black woman on the Supreme Court changes the court in a way that, to me, I think it changes it forever in a positive way, actually. It's something that, if you think about it, our country has been missing, is that voice on the highest court, considering what Black women have gone through in this country, right? So it's just anything other than celebrating something like this is just amazing to me. And Ted Cruz is a clown for his stance.
In Guyana, and as we head to Guyana now, Tom, if you were to say an official is a clown, they will sue for emotional distress. Yeah. They do that all the time. Under this installed regime, they do that. But in America, these things are possible because of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So yes, Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz out in Texas, is a clown.
Yeah.
Let's go to Guyana now.
Mm-hmm.
Just prior to the elections, 2020, the visiting team from the United States of America. You recognize them, do you?
Absolutely. I do.
That's your guy,
I
Congressman.
do. That's
And
right.
and that's Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. I want
That's
to
right.
say condolences to Yvette Clarke, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, on the passing of her partner, her lifelong partner,
Oh,
who
wow.
died sometime yesterday, I believe.
Condolences,
Yeah.
Congresswoman.
So there goes your guy, Weeks. There goes Weeks with the
Yeah.
U.S. ambassador to Guyana,
There's
along with them.
Meeks.
Yep. Meeks, sorry, Meeks, right?
Yep.
I get them mixed up. But let's go. Last week we touched on, or briefly, on the U.S. ambassador to Guyana. Her time should be up. It looks as though she is going to be there still, maybe for a long time. I don't know. There has
Yep.
been no appointments. No one, sorry, has been identified to replace her. Has there been any changes since last week to now, sir?
Not that I've seen at all, but I will say this: after going through and just digging into her fairly a lot, I've come to, let me just tell the audience what your country is dealing with her as an ambassador. You're dealing with a career State Department official, so she is a career government worker. Period. She is not someone who is going to wheel and deal business deals. She's not there to create, help Guyana create a new efficient water system or anything. She's there to make sure that all the paperwork gets processed properly. That's what she does. Okay. She's a bureaucrat. She makes sure that everybody clocks in on time, they clock out on time, and all the documents that need to be signed get signed on time and out the door. That's what she does, and that's what she will always do. So because of that, the people of Guyana have a huge advantage when dealing with someone like her, okay? With an ambassador like this. It's a huge advantage. Ambassadors like her, they get influenced by people on the ground. They do. Communications with the embassy. I'm serious. Protest if you have to. Communicating with someone like this will work. I promise you, because she, as a government official, has to be responsive to the people on the ground. Okay, so she's one of the few ambassadors who I can tell you can be influenced in a positive way. It has to be organized. You have to stick to it. But I truly believe if people, the diaspora here in the United States, if people on the ground petition the government with her there, I truly, I believe it or not, I believe things can actually get done. Not huge things, but things can be done to make life better for the Guyanese people, I believe, with her there. I truly believe that. Now, there are big issues that it's not her. She has no say on some of these bigger issues, right? But I truly believe on some smaller issues, some things dealing with education, other things, she may be actually a great resource to the people of Guyana. I don't think you can expect big things out of her, though, because she's simply a government worker.
What do you say simply the big things? Because
Yeah.
a lot of folks might be of the impression that she calls the shots.
No.
Who calls the shots? When
Look,
an ambassador is stationed overseas, as you've
so
said,
a lot of people call the shots, honestly. A lot of different people will call the shots, okay? Depending on the situation. So if it's something that, let's say, is of national security importance and it's dealing with something in the moment and it's an adversary like China, then it could get all the way up to the White House, where that's who's giving the order, right? But what she's essentially doing is she's the person on the ground to represent us. That's what she's doing, is representing us. She's not creating the game plan that's being implemented out there. She's following the orders.
Following the orders, indeed. You did say that she's a career diplomat. She started off as a teacher in Morocco. She taught what is considered to be high school. She taught English. She's fluent in of course, English, Arabic, Spanish, and some other languages. So folks understand and read between the lines. She's fluent in a lot of other languages. She taught in Morocco. She joined the State Department in 1993. She served in some places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Peru, and so forth.
Mhm.
What does that say when someone in the foreign service worked in all those countries that is considered to be hotbed, like Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth? Suppose she worked
Well, the obvious, right? That clearly she's working more on the intelligence wing of things. I mean, clearly, right? So, for seriously, like she is definitely someone who facilitates uh, strategic placement of United States interests and assets abroad. Okay, that's what she does. But I would say, if the best way to describe her would be, she isn't the owner of the business. She's the, like, if the business is a plant and they're manufacturing something, she's not the owner of the plant. She's the floor manager. She's making sure that everything is running on time, right? That's what she's doing. She doesn't decide when the plant opens and closes. She's not deciding any of that stuff. What equipment's going to be in there? She is there just to make sure everything flows properly, and she's taking orders from the owners, right? And that's the U.S. government. That's the State Department. Also, I believe she's probably listening to people in Congress like Gregory Meeks. He has a lot of influence being the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. So she's probably getting pulled in a lot of different directions. With that said, she's really good at implementing our policies wherever she's placed, because she's been placed many, many places to do it, right?
Fair enough. Look, there is a question from one of our listeners. Brenda Casey is saying, why does she align herself more with the PPPC? And that has been the perception based on what people have been seeing on the ground in Guyana. Align herself more with PPP operatives and less with opposition folks now. That's a question coming from Brenda Cassie, and that has been the perception of mainly opposition folks in Guyana.
Okay, so yeah, I think the main person who causes that is Gregory Meeks. I think it's him.
Why Gregory Meeks? Explain that to our listeners. Why Gregory Meeks?
So Gregory Meeks. So first of all, you have to understand that Guyana is not on the list of the top 10 most important things for our government to take care of. Most people in the government couldn't care less about. As a matter of fact, I bet if you polled most government workers and you asked them, where is Guyana? I'd say probably 7 out of 10 would say Africa. All right. So they don't know where it's at. They don't know what's going on. And so when you have a situation where a country is sort of overlooked by us, right? But then you have a situation where there's an ambassador who seems to be taking sides. Well, why would that be happening if the country's overlooked? Well, it's because there are people in our government who don't overlook Guyana, and Gregory Meeks is one of them. And the reason why he doesn't overlook Guyana is because Gregory Meeks has taken money from people from Guyana, a lot of money. Okay, so that's why this situation is occurring. So when you have someone as powerful as Gregory Meeks, who's the chairman of Foreign Relations Committee, and he's taking loans from people like Ed Ahmad, who convicted criminal here, right? He's taking loans and he's not paying them back, right? Until he gets another loan from another Democrat official. The bottom line is he's taking money from the representatives of the PPP. He has taken money from them, period. So with that in mind, he's the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He's powerful. He's a powerful member of Congress. It's a country that no one cares about here. So if he steps in and he says, hey, I want the ambassador to do certain things there, most people here are going to say, okay, fine, Greg, we don't care, because most people don't care about Guyana, right? So that's why I think it's Gregory Meeks that's doing this, in my opinion.
All right. Thomas Anderson here with us. He's talking about things that he knows about. And I know some of you might say, hey, wait a minute, that is not what we want to hear, or that's not what you want to hear. But please listen and understand exactly what is being said. And it's coming from someone who knows. Now, how much of an influence an ambassador has when representing the U.S. in any particular country, as of what they report about what's happening on the ground? Those reports come solely from the ambassador through their cables, or how it's done. Explain it. Break it down to people.
Well, through the cables, but also, some things have to go through diplomatic pouches that are, they have to be secured and can only be handed over by hand. They can't be going over any kind of cables. And by the way, and here's an issue with cables in Guyana. The government there has decided to give this contract to Huawei, this Chinese telecom company. And so any kind of communications in your country is going to be almost impossible to do without China picking it up. So that's a totally different issue. But with that said, yes, her staff, she oversees this. Her staff, they're the ones who are writing up this report, the reports, and they have specialists, and they're sending these reports back. But I can tell you, most of these reports aren't, even if they're saying something, like I said, most people in our government are not going to pay much attention to this. Okay, they just aren't. So what's happening with her reports? The reports coming out of that embassy in Guyana are there are a handful of people who care about them here, basically. And those people who care, from what it looks like to me, they tend to care for reasons that aren't good for us or the people of Guyana. And for some reason, they tend to be good for the PPP in China. I don't know why, but that's how these things are falling out. And so that's why I'm talking and I'm looking and I'm explaining these things, because I hate seeing it. I hate seeing that we have a situation in our backyard where we've got a problem and corrupt politicians here are taking advantage of it. Countries abroad are taking advantage of it, and the people of Guyana are being hurt by it all. It's just wrong all the way around.
Wrong all the way around. And let us move off from this. So you don't envision, or you don't see, that in the very near future, Sarah Ann Lynch will be replaced as ambassador. You don't see that happening anytime soon, do you?
Maybe not. I mean, but look, we're talking about it, and look, I know people are paying attention to your show. So us talking about it may actually cause something to happen. Okay. But here's the issue, right? Her replacement probably won't be better than her.
Why?
Right?
Why do you say that?
Because when the way our policy works, okay, is we don't create policy on the fly. We don't just decide, okay, this year we're going to treat Guyana this way. No, our policies are 50-year policies, 20-year policies, 10-year, 5-year. We have these massive multi-year policy objectives that we put in place, okay? And so that's what we're going by as our policy book, our objective book. So whoever goes in there, that person is just there to implement our policy. And that policy has been put in place now, and it's been in place for a long time. And that's not going to change no matter who they put in there.
All right. But how much of an influence the previous administration has in terms of what's happening in Guyana now and those policies? Some of those policies might be questionable.
That's
but
right.
we hope that they
right.
change. Some are
Well, that's the
questionable.
thing. So here's what happened. The previous administration, if they decided to, if anyone in Guyana noticed a change in American policy under the previous administration, and the administration put that policy in place, they did that not for this year or next year. They did it with goals for the next 10 years. So the last administration's influence will be felt on Guyana at least for the next 10 years, at least, maybe more.
But it is not that policies that are bad, which were implemented either, by the previous administration. It is not like those policies are there for the next 10 years. They can be changed.
But that's the key, right? They can be changed. They can be. But two things have to happen. The first thing is you have to reverse the bad policy, right? Unfortunately, for countries like Guyana, and for when they interact with us, we're so huge and we have so many policy objectives going in so many different directions. Guyana gets lost in the shuffle, right? So when you get lost in the shuffle, you end up in a situation where there are policies impacting you and no one even knows that they even exist. This is what's going on. So the first thing you have to do is root out the bad policies, even the ones that you don't know exist. And trust me, they are there. So you have to root those out. And after you rip those out, now you have to put in new policies, right? This is hard work. And this is what needs to be done.
All right. Tom Anderson with us this evening. Hey, Tom, talking about the policies, we saw right after the change of government and the PPP was actually installed. This guy, I think he didn't hand over some stuff, but you can talk if you want to talk about this guy on the right there. That is Mike Pompeo, then Secretary of State, rushed down to Guyana. And we see him there with Ambassador Sarah Ann Lynch and the now Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Hugh Todd. Any eyebrows when he jumped on the plane so quickly and rushed to Guyana?
Well, I mean, I told you this before, you have to remember, you guys are next door to Venezuela. So, I mean, that alone is going to, if anything happens abruptly like this, it's probably because of Venezuela, right? So I'm assuming that's what he was there to deal with. The way the previous administration sort of dealt with foreign policy was with a hammer. Basically, everything, they were just looking for nails to hit, right? They weren't trying to be subtle. They weren't trying to be sophisticated. They weren't trying to weave a gentle, soft policy over certain regions of the world. They were coming in to get their way or the highway. Either do what they say or get out the way, right? And that's what Pompeo was doing 100%. Those were his orders. And so he came into Guyana like that because there was something that needed to be done, period. End of story. And he personally needed to make sure that was done. I can only imagine it had to do something with Venezuela. I can only imagine.
Nothing to do with Exxon?
Well, that's also Venezuela, right? So... True. Well, that's sort of, I put Exxon in the middle of that, right? I mean, it's all one and the same at the end of the day, because whenever you're talking about oil and you're talking about Exxon and you're talking about that region, I mean, Venezuela is a big player in that, no matter how you cut it. And so, if there are oil problems with ExxonMobil, more than likely it's connected to Venezuela some way, somehow, and I'm pretty sure that's what would cause him to go down there, I believe. If it's something where it's just the oil and it's not Venezuela, I don't know if he goes down there.
Look at him meeting there with the installed president of Guyana that they caused to be installed, even though the elections results weren't, finished in terms of the right votes, the legal votes counted and declared the actual winner, which would have been the APNUAFC government.
Mark, everyone should know this, right? This is why I point to Gregory Meeks on this again. I'll tell you why. If you're Mike Pompeo, if you're the Trump administration, okay, and you're looking at an issue in the region of Venezuela, you're looking at Guyana and you got issues, okay? Gregory Meeks is going to be in the room on any serious discussions, okay? He is. And if Gregory Meeks is telling our government here, you can trust the PPP, then they're going to trust the PPP. I'm sorry. And that's why I look at this and I say, I think Gregory Meeks has a heavy hand in this, because I feel like he's the only guy who has the kind of power and influence to get people like Mike Pompeo and the Trump administration or any administration to do things in Guyana the way they've been doing. I really, truly believe that, because they have to believe and trust in somebody. And the only one I can think of that would get them to believe anything would be Gregory Meeks. I continue to come back to that guy. I'm sorry.
I know, and for good reasons too. We want to touch on China, but before we get to China, now at this meeting, when Mike Pompeo rushed down there and he was treated like a little king, as though he was a little king. You know what I mean? Install these people, and then he rushed to meet with them. And at this meeting, this so-called press conference, that guy who stands there as the installed president of Guyana actually asked Mike Pompeo to help them, the installed folks, to export catfish to the US. Now, here's an installed president asking the Secretary of State to assist in the exportation of catfish. How comical was that?
Well, I don't know if that's comical. Now that I think about it, where was the catfish supposed to be coming from? I'm curious now.
Guyana to the US.
But who's catfish farms? I'm curious who owns the catfish farms.
We're all curious about that.
You see, because that sounds like a business deal. One other thing I'll say about Mike Pompeo that you have to know. I know that he has ambitions to run for president. Okay. He has political ambitions. He lost, I don't know, like 100 pounds. Like, this guy's ready to run for office. He may have been doing these flights at the last second here before the administration went out to maybe solidify some support for a presidential run. I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. You want to do that, and you have a guy like Dr. Irfan Ali saying, "Hey, man, we want to cut a deal. You know, we want to sell some catfish in the United States." Well, if Mike Pompeo can pull off such a deal, and the owner of these catfish farms in Guyana, I don't know, maybe can bundle a bunch of money, maybe a few $100,000, and go into a national presidential fund for this guy to run for president, I could see how that could be, you know. So he could have been, actually, Mike Pompeo could have been on a world tour at the last second using State Department resources to basically build political support for his next political run, believe it or not. And maybe that's why Irfan Ali brought that up, because maybe he knows this guy was there to cut deals. You never know. I could be wrong, but that's what it kind of sounds like when you describe all of this.
Remember when he became CIA, head of the CIA?
Yep.
He was a businessman, of course, a businessman. What was he doing? He was selling equipment to oil companies, right?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
when he got there as head of the CIA, he brought along his business partner with him. And
Yep.
so Mike Pompeo is a businessman.
Yeah.
He is a businessman.
That's it.
Let's talk about the Chinese and their influence in Guyana and all that money, the loans that they're giving to Guyana. Let's talk about that. Your take.
Well, who was the Chinese woman who said that the Guyanese government is properly budgeting their money? Who was that said that?
That's the Chinese ambassador. She said that recently in an interview there with one of the PPP mouthpiece.
Okay, so let me just put that in some perspective, right? Imagine the United States, the Chinese ambassador to the United States, telling the American people, "Hey guys, don't worry. The US government, they're budgeting money just fine. You have nothing to worry about." We would go nuts over here if such a thing happened. And you know why we would go nuts? How does she know that the Guyanese government's budget is proper? How does she know? It sounds like they know about every penny that's coming in and out of Guyana. And so it sounds like she knows about every penny that's coming in. That's not her country, but she knows about all the money, and she knows about it so well, she's here to tell the Guyanese people, "Hey, your government's doing great with the money." Really? So what are her standards for doing great with the money, I wonder? Because I look at Guyana and I say, whoa, that country needs more schools. Well, apparently this ambassador feels like everything in Guyana is fine right now because the budget is just fine. And, you know, not having schools, I'll bet from her perspective, she actually doesn't care if you have schools or not. Now, does she? So from her perspective, the government's doing just fine with the budget. They're not overspending because from her perspective, what do the people of Guyana need money for anyway? You don't need schools. Why do you need to educate your kids? You guys are nobody anyway, right? So that's what I took when I heard her say it. I thought to myself, who do you think you are to tell another to tell the people, poor people, regular people in another country, that you feel like you have the authority to tell them, I know what your government's doing with your money, and I know they're doing great with it. So just smile and be happy. What? Offensive. It's so offensive. It just blew me away. So that's the first thing. But let me pass it over to you, Mark. What do you think about what I just said? Because I'm sorry, it really offended me.
Before I give my opinion on that, there are some folks who might say the Chinese ambassadors speaking out and representing, of course, what they are about: big money, give loans, control, and all these different things. Some of those officials in the installed regime may have bank accounts in Beijing. Some senior officials may have bank accounts in Beijing. So they've got to do whatever that is necessary, which is to play the Guyanese people. But let's get back to U.S. Ambassador Sarah Ann Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks are angry, and maybe rightly so, that she's quiet about human rights violations in Guyana. And we have seen U.S. ambassadors over the years representing the United States in different countries stand up, and they have spoken out about these atrocities, these human rights violations, racism, not perception, but racism, and the persecution of citizens. And for some reason, the U.S. ambassadors seem to be very silent on these things. Respond to that, and
Okay.
then I will give my answer about the Chinese ambassador.
Okay, so let me tell you why she will never do anything about human rights abuses in Guyana. I'm just going to tell you why. At least not for the foreseeable future. Here's why. Look at who she is. She is a white American woman, okay? She works for a government that has many, 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 many powerful men and women of color, okay? Some of these men and women of color have constituents who are diaspora, who are from Guyana, okay? They are. None of these representatives are speaking to her or anybody else about human rights abuses. So why would a white American woman do anything about human rights abuses in Guyana when African American members of Congress don't say anything about it?
Well, there are some who have said about it. We have Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Yvette Clarke, and some others have spoken out about that.
But who is the most senior in leadership? Gregory Meeks.
However,
he is the most powerful man right now in the Congressional Black Caucus when it comes to anything in foreign anything.
And he's silent. He's quiet on these.
If he isn't saying anything about human rights abuses in Guyana, you cannot expect a white woman to do anything. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. This is the issue here.
Is that fair, though, to have someone who is representing the interest of America, and the foremost interest, apart from businesses and so forth, deals? We're talking about human rights violations and democracy and these things. And when an ambassador is placed in a country, it should not to represent the U.S. interests. It should not be about whether they're white or pink or yellow or black or brown or whatever. It should be about the interest. We have seen ambassadors in Guyana, especially, who are white, and they spoke out against human rights violations and so forth, albeit the most we have seen were under two African-American ambassadors. The best.
But Mark, did we have an African-American chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee?
Back then.
Did we have an African-American chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee who took thousands of dollars from a crony of the PPP regime? I'm just asking. So what I'm saying is, when you have that man that powerful in that position, you cannot. And when I say a white American woman, what I'm saying to you is imagine if she looks at what's going on, right? And she says, there are human rights abuses here, and a black member of Congress says, no, there isn't. Well, what is she going to say? What is she going to say? That's what's going on here. That's the issue here, right? Is we have people in power here in the United States who are truly evil people, okay? And they support evil people in Guyana. And you cannot expect a government, a career government person to stand on their own personal morals when a powerful man like Gregory Meeks is taking thousands of dollars from PPP cronies and saying there's nothing wrong with Guyana, right? Like, what is she going to do? What is she going to do in that situation? Nothing. That's why you see a lot of the problems you're seeing.
Lots of problems indeed. This we can go on and on about this situation there. That is why the new U.S. Secretary of State has said that he wants ambassadors representing the U.S. in different countries to basically reflect the population of that country, to reflect the population. You know what he meant by that, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So
well, because here in the States, in retail, in stores, in stores that sell things, they tell people, hey, make sure that when you staff your store, you staff them with people that look like your customers, right?
Exactly. And you staff your country with ambassadors that look like the people. Like, for example, in Jamaica, the ambassador designate is a Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
Former Assemblyman Nick Perry from Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. He's a Jamaican. Mm-hmm. He should be heading to Jamaica soon if he's confirmed, because, the confirmation session has been held up for almost 2 years now. Yeah. I hope they get over that.
Well, remember what I tell you, though. Remember this, though. It's the policy that supersedes all. So it really doesn't matter. I'm serious on this. You can put any ambassador you want anywhere. It's U.S. policy that supersedes everything. Everything. So since that's the case, our policy in Jamaica is going to supersede anything our ambassador is going to do there. Period. End of story. I mean, that's it. And there's just so much that they can do. It's almost like a ceremonial position sometimes, to tell you the truth. It really is. When you get into situations where our government policy trumps everything, and it's a situation where the country is pivotal on something important in our policy. That's when ambassadors are it doesn't matter who's in there. And I think that's what's happening to Guyana right now. Essentially, Guyana is in the middle of a fight between two heavyweight world champions, China and the United States. And you throw in Russia, right? And so Guyana's in the middle of a really big fight, okay? Huge fight. The ambassador is in the middle of that. And so that ambassador is not going to move on her own. She's going to do whatever the policy says to do. And that is going to come out of Washington, D.C. And people like Gregory Meeks are going to have a lot of influence on that policy.
All right. You asked me my take on China and what the ambassador of China is doing in Guyana. Recently, a couple of days ago, she came out, which I believe is a PR stunt. I thought it was strange, just like your opinion, that she would come just like that and start to explain the monies, the loans, and so forth. Somewhere along the line, they're smelling a rat that most Guyanese people are becoming concerned with the aggression shown in terms of loans, and they have an airport to do. They haven't done it. If the airport is, the cost of an airport is 20 million, they charge 150 million, and all these different things. So I believe the ambassador is becoming concerned, the Chinese ambassador to Guyana, hence this public propaganda machinery that is out now by the Chinese. It didn't come as a surprise to you, did it?
That she came out and said what she said?
Yeah.
That surprised me. That did. It was arrogant. It's very arrogant. Very arrogant. And look, if the people in Guyana want to know what to think about this, there's a simple way to think about it, right? China is competing with us, okay? They are looking to hurt the United States big time wherever they can. And anytime they come into our backyard, which is this Western hemisphere here, okay, and they start to dabble in a country like Guyana, and they start to install broadband internet cables and stuff like that, you have to ask yourself a simple question. Are they there because they love the people of Guyana and they want to see the people of Guyana prosper like they have never prospered before? Is that why they're there? Or are they there to take advantage of a situation that they see that they can take advantage of because America's been asleep at the wheel? In countries like Guyana, we haven't paid much attention to. And so they see that they might be able to get in there and do something to hurt us. That's what this is. How does it benefit the people of Guyana to be used to hurt the United States? I'm just wondering, right? I mean, do the people of Guyana want to be that country that's caught between two superpowers and being used to hurt one against the other? In the end, the only people that hurt in that are the people of Guyana, right? No one else is being hurt in that situation. So this is when I was on last week, I said it's imperative that the people of Guyana get serious about their government institutions. You don't have to have a powerful government with weapons. What you have to have is a government that's accountable and has real government, has real systems and provides real services to the people, right? Because when you have that, then you can stand on your own without any help from any other government, the Chinese or the American government. And if you can do that, then you don't get caught between the fight between the two of us. And if you don't get caught between the fight with us, then guess what? Your children can get educated. They can live good lives. Your lives can get better. Good things can happen. But if you get bogged down in this fight between us two and you don't do what you need to do, then you all will be destroyed. I mean, that's just the reality here.
You know, Tom, before we go, because you will be back next week, we didn't touch on money laundering and so-called businessmen and so forth, the perception, and maybe some of you guys may have information that there are some questionable business people in Guyana who have funded and probably still are funding extremist groups outside of Guyana. And what I mean by that is Hezbollah and other such organizations. Now, if you wish to give a quick call, have a question for Tom, here is your opportunity for those who are in Canada to let us see if the numbers are working. You have been asking for numbers to call in. If you're in the UK, I know it's a bit late in the UK. Here's your chance to ask a question. Here's your chance to dial the number. It's a local number in Canada for even those in the US. If you want to make a quick call, it's 647. It's on the screen there, and the UK number. We're waiting quickly. We can probably snap up 2 calls or so quickly if you have a question for Tom Anderson this evening. Tom, while we await maybe a phone call or two, what's your take on these CCTV stuff being installed by Yahweh, the Chinese in Guyana?
So here's the problem, right? So I'm thinking as an American, let's say I'm an American businessman and I want to do business in Guyana. I'm not going to want to do business there simply because I'm going to know that when I get down on the ground there, every move I make is going to be recorded by some Chinese government camera. It's going to be downloaded and it's going to be in some supercomputer in Beijing in a month. Okay. I don't want that. No businessman wants that. So you have a situation where potentially the Chinese government could be spying on people who are coming to your country who want to do good for Guyana. Let's say they have an affair on the side with some woman in Guyana. Well, now the Chinese government has film footage of it. They use it to blackmail them. You see, this is what can happen, and this is when I look at the situation.
If we pause for a moment, we have a quick question. Good evening, caller. Good, thank you.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yes. This guy Lemon, he has a very interesting topic.
Yeah, he's not Lemon, but he's Mr. Anderson. Do you have a quick question, sir?
Yeah. Saying that the embassy, the ambassador, and the guy that you mentioned, who is taking the money from the Guyana government. What is it that do you think that the Guyana government can do, or the opposition, the people in opposition can do to remove that guy, or to get the government of the U.S. to deal with that individual?
Who individual you're speaking of? Congressman?
Gregory Meeks, yeah.
The guy that Sierra Lynch is taking suggestions from.
Okay.
Who's taking the money from the PPP?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Tom, our first caller, he took you for our operator Lemon.
So it's all good, man. So
Yeah.
here's how it goes. So Greg, I've been working for years to get Gregory Meeks out of there. Years. He's too powerful. He just simply is too powerful. Instead of him going down, Senator Sampson went down, I believe, right?
State senator. Big
State senator, New York State Senator Sampson went down so that Meeks wouldn't have to go down, I believe. With that said, I don't believe anyone in our government is going to do anything about this man. They just are not going to do it. The people have to deal with him, okay? This is what I take from everything. For Gregory Meeks to be dealt with, he has to lose at the ballot box. Someone in New York City has to run against him. There has to be a new AOC in Queens that eliminates this man. That's the only way you fix this.
All right, politically, yes. The caller, good evening. Yeah, if you can turn that down, please, for a sec. Your volume. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, sir. If you can turn your volume down, your computer volume down. Go ahead.
All right. I just want to make some clarity. There are some understanding of foreign policy, and I don't think you fully understand foreign policy. Mr. Meeks is doing the work of the United States. That's his job. The PNC presently has a poor record when it comes to foreign policy. Meeks knows quite well that the PNC presently doesn't have the backing of Africa. And without Africa, who is really going to fight for you? If you're an African and you are complaining about racial issues and you don't have the backing of Africa, then you have some problems. The PPP is not mistaken. When they're on the foreign in Ghana, they know what they're doing quite well. I think the people who have not yet understood exactly what is going on in terms of foreign policy. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. You heard the caller there, Mr. Anderson. He's talking, he's saying that Congressman Meeks is working in the interest of America. How much accuracy is there in what that gentleman just said?
He's right. He's right. He is. But it's like the chicken or the egg. Which came first, okay? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? We don't know. That's see, is it Meeks who has created over the decades the atmosphere to have the policy in place that he just now says, I'm just implementing the policy, right? Or is it that, so I think Meeks has been at this since the late 90s. This is nothing new, okay? Nothing new. He's been at this since the late 90s. He has had a hand in crafting our overall policy because of that. See, very few people know that this man's been in power for so long. So the policy that's there is there because of him. Now he's in a position where he's just implementing the American policy, but he was one of the authors of it so many years ago. That's what's so crazy about it.
And some folks are probably like that gentleman. And thanks for the calls. And feel free, we can snap up maybe another caller too. that Meeks, Congressman Meeks, was actually accused of taking money. Agencies were part of that investigations, and I know
he did. Oh, he did take the money.
You were familiar with that. Explain that. So, yeah.
So he took $15,000 from Ed Ahmad. Okay. The FBI asked him, "Hey, where's this $15,000 from, Congressman?" And he said, "Oh, it's a loan." So they asked, "Well, where are the loan documents?" "Oh, well, I don't have those anymore." "Okay, well, how many payments have you made?" "Oh, I haven't made any yet." It had been years. Okay. Finally, a big donor to the Democrat Party gave him another loan as a mortgage, like a third mortgage on his house. And he used that to pay back Ed Ahmad. And that's how he was able to claim it was just a loan. But come on, man. I'm sorry. That's not what happened here. And so here's the other thing, just so you know, with the policy and with Gregory Meeks being around since the 90s. He's been a very, very influential member of Congress when it comes to Guyana for a very long time. Just think back to people like R. Allen Stanford, okay, and the cricket stuff. If anyone can remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there was a story, you can find it, where during that time, R. Allen Stanford had a problem with Hugo Chavez. And you know what he did? He called Gregory Meeks personally, and guess who fixed the problem? Gregory Meeks called Hugo Chavez to leave R. Allen Stanford alone. That's how serious Gregory Meeks gets with the people who he works for. And I'm not talking about the voters, okay? And so if you just look at guys like R. Allen Stanford, those are the kind of guys that Meeks has been dealing with. He's been dealing with these guys for many, many years, decades. These people are powerful. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of interests in the Caribbean. And so he's been at this U.S. policy that we now have, this broken, screwed up policy. Look at Gregory Meeks for why it's there, because he's had a huge hand in crafting this policy right now, that he is a guy saying, I'm just doing what the U.S. wants me to do. Well, he made it that way.
All right, Tom Anderson here for us. He's the director of Government Integrity Project out there in Washington, D.C. Knows all about Meeks and all those other guys. Tom is very familiar with them. And Tom is just not coming here to talk off the top of his head. He knows exactly what he's talking about. Tom, a lot of people are upset, yes. Depends on who you speak with, but a lot of our listeners are very upset in terms of what you're saying, not upset at you, but the fact that one man wields so much power and that one man is playing partisan politics that is dividing Guyana more and more, that one man is being so unfair to the Guyanese populace, and that one man, according to what is being said, happens to be Meeks, Congressman Meeks. You have said that there's only one way to deal with that, and that's at the elections time, to vote him out. Do you see him being voted out anytime soon? He has been there in the 90s since Congressman Major Owens from Brooklyn. Major Owens has died and gone now. He has been there when Una Clark was first elected as city councilor. Councilwoman, and then her daughter Yvette Clark, now Congresswoman, was a council member, and so forth. That is how long Meeks has been around.
Yes.
Do you see him being voted out?
Yes, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. He hasn't had to run a campaign in decades. If he had a real challenge, he wouldn't know what to do. He hasn't had to campaign in decades. He wouldn't be able to campaign if it were to save his job. He wouldn't be able to do it. So what he needs a credible candidate to run against him, period, in the Democratic Party. Okay. And I promise you, everyone will see the emperor has no clothes. If a legitimate candidate goes up against him, you will see the emperor has no clothes, period. End of story. This guy is a house of cards. He's ready to go. Like I said, he hasn't campaigned in decades. He doesn't know what a campaign is. He doesn't know how to win an election. He's easy pickings. Okay? Easy.
Easy pickings indeed. And he slipped away with the accusations, and of course, proven to be true. Money's taken from Ed Ahmed. And a lot of people might ask, how the heck did he get over that? And he's still congressman.
Well, remember, Gregory Meeks, you know that he was a district attorney before he became a congressman, law enforcement. And so he has connections in the Eastern District. He has connections all over the place when it comes to law enforcement. So he's practically untouchable, guys, right? He has to be beaten politically. He just has to. He's way too connected to be dealt with through law enforcement. Okay, it's not going to happen.
And someone may say, in the United States of America, you've had powerful people who were dealt with by law enforcement, different law enforcement agencies and all these. You had a President Nixon who was investigated, had to resign. You have others. You have this guy, Trump, being investigated and all these things. Meeks is more powerful than those guys. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. He plays an interesting role. He's that guy that can say to our government, hey, I can ensure that the nation of Guyana stays with us and they don't sway over to China. I can guarantee you that. He can say things like that, right? So
meanwhile, behind the scenes, it may be something different.
Well, that's what you have to understand is because no one cares about Guyana here, it's almost like he's the stealth king in the background where he rules over it all because no one's going to get in his way, right? No one's going to tell him no. And whatever he says goes. And if he says, hey, I can keep Guyana, in the pocket of the United States, everyone's going to believe him when he says that in our government. Okay. Everyone's going to believe it. So, and he can say that about not just Guyana. He had a very special relationship with Robert Mugabe before he died. Okay. Very special. Robert Mugabe said there's only one man he would speak to that's an American. It's Gregory Meeks before he died. Okay. That's the kind of influence Gregory Meeks has abroad. And when you have that kind of influence abroad, that's important. It carries weight, right? And that's part of the reason why he's untouchable.
I know one man for sure who didn't say that Gregory Meeks is the only person he would speak with or meet with. That is the dictator in North Korea, who his preference was to meet with who.
Exactly.
In closing, we'll touch on some other matters next week. But you did say about you were talking about the Chinese investments with CCTV and facial recognition and so forth and so on. Take a couple of minutes in your closing remarks to say to the Guyanese people, how dangerous is that?
Yeah, well, you have to understand, China uses technology to control populations. Okay, and when I say control a population, they want to change your behavior as Guyanese people. They want you to not behave the way you always have behaved. They need you to behave in ways that benefit them. In order for them to do that, they put cameras everywhere. They watch everyone. They make files on everyone. They listen to all of your phone calls. They read all of your emails. They know all of your lovers. They know every addiction you have, whatever vice you've got, they've got it all. And they use it in order to control the entire population wholesale, no questions asked. So when you see them coming in and they're laying down wires and cables and they're saying, oh, this is for your internet, it's to watch you. Okay. And it's to watch you so that they can control you. Okay. And just keep in mind, and I look at it and just say to myself, I think to myself, man, how strange is it?
You know what? I'm looking at some of the comments here. I'm sorry that I interrupted you. I'm looking at some of the comments here. They're saying that America does the same.
Yes, we do.
But
We
yes,
do, but let me tell you the
we know
difference.
that.
Let me tell you the
But
difference.
the very people are saying the lesser of two evils. I'm seeing one comment siding with China. I'm sure every week we don't see hundreds of people going to Beijing, going to China to live, but they're
Well,
coming to
it's not just that. It's not just,
States.
here's the thing. The people who are saying, well, America does the same thing, do they? Because you hear me talking. I can promise you, if I were in Beijing right now, you wouldn't hear me. You would never hear me. You would never know I exist. Well, guess what's happening in your country as they're laying down the cameras and the cables? They're going to make sure that most of you, the world doesn't even know you exist. That's what they're going for. Okay. Now you can say in America, we do the same. We do not do the same here because as you can hear my voice, I'm here in the United States. I'm speaking against our elected officials the way I want to. And guess what? No one's going to say anything to me about that. But
no
I
one
can
is going to
promise
charge
you
you and put you at CID headquarters for hours as what that dictatorship, that installed PPP regime is doing to its citizens.
Exactly. That's never going to happen to me. But let me tell you this. After the Chinese put all those cameras in there, if you speak out against their interests or if you speak out against the PPP's interests, trust me when I tell you, they're going to use those cameras to track you down and snatch you up. I'm just telling you, this is what they do. I'm not making it up. This is what they do everywhere they go. This is not what America does. We do not lay cables down in countries to snatch people up. That's not what we're doing, guys. I can promise you that's not what we're doing. Our mistake with Guyana is not paying attention to Guyana. That's our mistake as Americans, okay? We're making a huge mistake in doing that. But that's a far cry from trying to spy on you guys and trying to control you as a part. That's not what we're trying. No, we're being negligent in our responsibilities as a neighbor. We are to Guyana, and I will admit that for sure. Hugely negligent, we are. But we are not actively trying to put things in place that are going to obviously hurt the average person on the ground. That's not what we're doing as a nation. That's not our policy objective. China has policy objectives for that because it's to their benefit to have a wild and chaotic Guyana. It's to their benefit. It's not to our benefit in the United States to have that.
All right, Tom Anderson there. He is the director of the Government Integrity Project out in Washington, D.C. Before we go, there was a caller with an African accent that actually said, that he asked a question about maybe Guyana should start aligning itself with powerful African or countries in Africa. What is your take on what that caller said?
I mean, you could try doing that, but like I say, in order to do something like that, you have to put that's a 30, 40-year policy objective, right? You will have to do things like foreign student exchange with those countries first of all, right? Like, because you have to start off small. Like to do something like that, it would take so many resources. It would take so much. Guyana is not in a position. Put it this way. If you don't have your own house in order, how can you reach out to another house to help you get it? It's not going to happen, right?
Good point.
You have to get your house in order first before you reach out anywhere else. Because trust me when I tell you, if Guyana reaches out to an African country right now, those leaders are going to say to the Guyanese leaders, wait a minute, I know you need help, but you guys look kind of dysfunctional. How do I know that if we help you, we're going to see any return or anything from this? And what are you going to say to them? You have no way to prove it. I mean, do you have a bank in England in London that's going to say, no, we promise you the Guyanese government's good, or these businesses in Guyana are good for this type of money and this type of investment? Who's going to vouch for you? No one. That's the problem here, right? And so that's why the Chinese are coming and ripping you off, because you don't have legitimate banks vouching for you, legitimate corporations vouching for you. And they're not vouching for you because they can't do legitimate business here, and they can't in Guyana, and they can't do legitimate business in Guyana because the government doesn't have the basic institutions in place to do legitimate business. So before you even start thinking about abroad or bringing other people to help, Guyana has to first provide its people with basic government institutions so that they can do for themselves. You have to have that first. And then once you have that, then you can start talking about reaching out to other countries and creating coalitions. But get your house in order first. That has to happen first, and that has not happened.
Well said, Tom Anderson, my good friend for years. Thank you so much for your time. Next week, I want us to talk more about the Chinese influence, of course, government influence, not Chinese as an individual, as a group, but the government of China's influence in Guyana. I want us to touch on maybe narco trafficking, money laundering, because if you notice, Tom, nobody's reporting anymore about the guns, the 5-point-something million US dollars guns that those folks, those Ukrainians are probably still in jail somewhere there in Senegal. Nothing about that, Tom. What's happening? Nothing?
Man, like I say, until Guyana can get her house in order, we are going to see things like this escalate. It's going to get worse. The shipments are going to be coming in more and more. It's going to get crazier, and it's going to be really bad for the people of Guyana on the ground if it continues in this way. Really
bad indeed. We'll see you back next week. Hopefully, we'll have our former British intelligence officer, foreign security officer, with us to talk about things that you guys want to hear about. Lots of things. And we'll have some interesting guests in future programs as well on a Wednesday night with my guest / co-host, Thomas Anderson. Tom, thank you so much.
Hey, Mark, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
See you next Wednesday.
Take care, man.
All the best. All right, Tom Anderson there for you guys. My name is Mark Benshop. It's 27 minutes after 10 o'clock in beautiful Guyana. Time is different wherever you are. You notice that we have numbers now, right? We will have a Guyana number. We will have a U.S. number because we want all of you to participate in this program. Not just this program, but this show, Straight Up. So you can call and give your views as well. Any part of the world you can be to call us. It's a local number in Canada. It's a local number in the UK. We'll have a local number from Guyana and a local number in the US. Democracy at play. Democracy. And Tom is knowledgeable about lots of different things and different agencies within the US. And so I don't take him as coming on this show just to gaff or to say who he knows or what. Notice he hasn't said that. But I'm sure that he can say that. It is not about that. It's about edifying you, giving you guys a better understanding as to how things work. Some of you may disagree with him, but most of you, I'm sure, agree with what Tom Anderson had to say this evening. Tomorrow, we'll be back. Friday, we'll be back. But tomorrow morning, the hottest show, morning show in Guyana is this. The mid-morning show. Everything you get, the full package. Some music, some talking, and a little bit of the headlines from the newspapers. The legitimate newspapers in Guyana, like the Village Voice and so forth. And at times, Culture News gets a couple of plugs as well. And Gordon Mosley, News Source. All right, so we plug who plug us. If you don't plug us, well, we don't plug you. Right, Lemon? All right, so tune in tomorrow morning. Again, thank you all for listening this evening. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. Same place, same time. Listen to this message and keep the PPP in mind. Those installed people in the PPP. Listen to this message. It makes sense. And if Irfan Ali is listening and Bara Jagdev is listening, pay careful attention.
What is the difference between the ordinary thief and a political thief? Number one, the ordinary thief steals your money, your bag, your watch, and your jewelry, isn't it? But the political thief steals your future, your career, your education, your health, and your business. Number 2, the hilarious part is that the ordinary thief will choose whom to rob. But you are the one who choose the political thief to rob you. Because we choose them. We vote them. We blindly say we are not blind. Who is deceiving who? The ridiculous part of the whole issue is that we will fight to defend and protect our belongings from the ordinary thief. Is it not? But we fight each other to defend and protect the political thief. Is that not what we do? Thugs will be fighting themselves to protect those that are stealing our career, stealing our joy, stealing our health, stealing our success. What a shame. What a travesty. It calls for us to think and think deep. The stage we are in as a country is not a stage where you become an onlooker. You have become an onlooker for too long. You must get ready to put your hands to the plow and be part of the process. It's not just about PVC, carry PVC. You must be in the kitchen where it is being determined. You must be there where the decisions are being made. If we are there in our numbers, they cannot outnumber us. But you leave it aloof. Oh, no, it's too dirty. It's a dirty game. And then the dirty guy is getting to the game of play. And you are there not showing up. And when they begin to make the decisions, you will know whether it's a dirty game or not. The result is always dirty on yours. Dirty on your health. Dirty on your business. Dirty on your success and your career. I hope that is stirring up something in you.